I would like to do some of the environmental pieces around him and maybe show you guys some cheats for texturing stuff as well. But yeah, so I have just a basic sand texture underneath this dude. And let's see, I think we'll just append a plane 3D. And we will line this up underneath him and then scale it up a little bit. Geometry size, we'll just crank that up real big. And let's move that over. I think that's probably fine. Let's turn on double, just make sure we can see the backside polys there. There's a few things that are sticking out to me here on this guy. There's a lot that I would like to correct. We spent one stream posing this guy up, and honestly, it's going to take a bit more than that. He's getting there. He's starting to look a lot closer to the concept than he was previously when he was in his neutral pose. Yeah, he's getting there. Starting to become cuter and cuter with each pass. But yeah, let's go ahead and project some of this information for the sand. Before I do that, though, you know what? Let's try the projection first. So I'm going to come down here into geometry, and I'm going to turn off the smooth mod and just divide this up. Let's try 1 million polys. Looks pretty dense to me. I think that'll do for now. I'm gonna go down into my texture menu and click, come back, texture, import, and let's grab, I don't have, that's fine. I don't have the original image without it being cropped. So what I'll do here, let's see, let's turn our opacity down. And look at that, our pose isn't quite right. We're not wriggly enough. And I think the proportion of our head. I said this last time I streamed that the head is too small, and I think for sure now I can see that lining this up. So I'm going to turn down the opacity on this. Grab my standard brush with mRGB, and let's see. I want to just use the spotlight tool as it was intended. Here, I'll turn down the opacity so you guys can see what's going on underneath. I'm essentially projecting that image onto that plane. You can do this with not just a plane, you can do this with anything. But I'm doing it on a plane because I would like to make some sand. You could also use this as a reference image if you wanted to for your character, or really whatever you're working on. I really wanted to get mainly just the sand. So what I'm now going to do, so this is just kind of the step one of this. Project some of this, and now what I'm going to be doing is using the C key to essentially sample some of these colors. Standard brush, color spray, alpha 07. So what this will do, let me turn spotlight projection off. It's essentially just like a little airbrush now with my standard brush. Pretty cool. We'll turn down RGB intensity a little bit, I think. There we go. And let's just start kind of blocking out some of this a little bit around here. And let's turn up. You know what, for the first kind of pass here, we'll just do kind of a harsher level. Keep that nice and strong. We got a cute little starfish on there that we can maybe model. And let's see, maybe we can get a little bit more of this. I'm gonna try painting out these bubbles. And essentially, we're gonna be painting out the doggo as well. I'm just using the C key to quickly sample some of these different values and shades and go through painting on this. So we're getting a pretty similar texture here to what was used in the painting. And I just want to go through and blend some of this out. And I can we can probably spend quite a bit of time doing something like this. And we don't have to do all of this. But the next step that I want to try doing is creating some noise on this plane to see if we can start getting a little bit of a sandy texture, which we can do next. Let's turn on perspective so we can see this from an angle. Come down here under surface and turn on noise. Here we have our plane that we can work on. Am I going to render in ZBrush? Sometimes. For this little doggy, I will probably not render in ZBrush. I'll probably render in Keyshot or Blender, one of those two. But let's zoom in here. So we want to create this sand texture. And I think with the standard noise material, I think we should be able to get a pretty good sand texture because that's pretty much what the most basic noise is. And we can like zoom in on this a little bit. Let's see, we can increase the scale to make it larger or decrease it to make it smaller. I actually want that to be a little bit smaller. Let's say 0.2. That looks pretty sandy to me. And for the strength, I think I'm gonna make the strength a little bit higher than probably what it needs to be. Ooh. Looks like it barely applied at all, so let's crank that strength up here. Let's go back in with edit and just crank that strength. Crank that strength. Let's try something like that. Whenever you apply noise to a mesh, it typically comes through a lot more weak than what it appears. So that's actually pretty close to what I was looking for. My fear is that we might be getting some holes in the geometry. Not holes, but places where, see these like little black dots? Let's go back. Turn off that color blend as well. Do about right there. You know what? We'll just leave that. I think that's actually pretty close to what we want here. So this will actually give our paint kind of that, or I'm sorry, our sand a little bit more physical volume here, so that we're actually getting, you know, not just the poly paint that I'm applying to this that's creating a little bit more variation, but we're also getting some variation from the actual geometry. And then on top of that, the paintbrush that I'm using, the paint combo, actually, with the color spray, starts to get a little bit more variation in the color. I'm not sure how well you guys can see this on the stream, but there's some reds and greens and blues and yellows in there as well. So you can get some pretty cool effects with that. But we'll just kind of continue here. I think some of that darker sand is from the shadow from where he's lying on the bed of the sea. So I think I'll just paint out really most of this with this base color. I think we're getting a lot of good stuff from that form. So we got that going on. In terms of the blue, it's kind of just the light shining through on the water, creating that effect. So maybe we can recreate a little bit of that. Let's see. Let's fill in here very quickly. Let me apply that material. And let's just fill in some of this white out here. Make sure we get all this covered. We don't have any white space. I'm using a little bit of a larger brush to do that. That's okay. And we'll just fill all that in. Beautiful. All right. And then for the kind of streaks here, we can maybe match a little bit of what we're seeing. I recommend when you start painting variation in your form, whether you're using this kind of color spray or not, I recommend that you use a low RGB intensity. Painting with RGB values tends to be very strong and overpowered by default. So turning that down a little bit, I find can be very helpful. So let's see, we got, what do I want to do here for the streaks? I was thinking just kind of, maybe like, I don't think lazy mouse is going to be a good idea. I think we'll just kind of do some quick, larger streaks here. Just like with sculpting, you want to block out your form for your paint. We'll just do the same thing here. And then what I want to do is use some of that blue and start to taper in that line a little bit. So it starts to get a little bit sharper. We start to get kind of these, a little bit of this ray effect. I think we should continue these a little bit further out. Let's see here. Do these a little bit larger and stronger. A little messy here. Alright, now we'll grab that blue, shrink our brush down, start to maybe like taper some of these rays. So it feels like they're not so blocky, not so sharp, or a little bit more sharp, I should say. And we can maybe pull some of this blue into here in certain areas as well, and just start working on this effect slowly but surely. So like I said, just like sculpting, start by blocking out the big shape and start to get some variation in there. And then you maybe sample a few additional colors in here. I think, like I said, a lot of what we'll get in terms of some of this stuff around here is going to be from the shadow of the actual character, like this. But in terms of the kind of like wavy texture that we're getting in there, let's just grab that darker color and kind of like get a few patches in here where I'm seeing some of this. This might be a little bit dark and overpowered. That's all right. Just get a little bit more variation in here. Try to do this quick for just blocking this out. And we'll get more of this sharpness in here. Let's do a quick little BPR with this front light on. And you know what, I could move that light to be a little bit more direct, since that's what we're gonna see naturally. I just wanna see what the shadows are looking like on that plane. So by default, the shadows in ZBrush are super harsh. If you guys wanna play with these, very quickly, go into your render settings under BPR shadow. This is what I recommend doing. Decrease your rays down to about, or G strength down to about, a quarter or 0.15 or so. You probably want to up your rays for your final render. For this, it's probably fine since it's just a quick preview. So we'll just leave that on the default of 12. And we'll do that BPR one more time. And give that a second to calculate. The main thing that you want to change there is your angle, so you're not getting super harsh shadows there. So now we're starting to get some nicer, softer shadows directly behind him, so that's starting to work a little bit better. I think we need to get some more variation in the color here for the sand. From that direct view, we're getting a little bit of that, can't remember what the effect is called. You see the vertical and horizontal lines here happening because of the noise. So it might be a good idea to come through with a very low RGB or low intensity smooth brush and soften some of that sand texture out. But I say we move on because I don't want to spend too much time on this. I think you guys get the basic idea for how we want to go about blocking out. Mainly I wanted to show you guys how to project the paint and then how to start using the color spray paintbrush to get some nice variation in color and texture very quickly. What I would do for this moving forward, what I would like to do, obviously get some of these starfish and bubbles, I think we'll do that next. But in terms of the actual like paint here, I'd probably grab, let's see, I probably wouldn't use color spray for some of this and just like freehand some of these like little smaller dots, or use an alpha with a drag rectangle. If we would like, probably wouldn't use that alpha that we just previously used. And that's probably a bit too large for something like this. So I think it might be easier to freehand some of that, but I'm sure there are a ton of awesome alphas that we could use with drag rectangle to start getting a really cool effect there. Let's lower that a little bit more. And then maybe just kind of like very quickly, you know, freehand some of this additional kind of texture in the sand and play around with that, where we're seeing some of this additional information. Some darker than others. All right, but let's talk about form. Form more. I'm gonna hide that because it's a little distracting. We'll fix our light as well. Let's do a quick starfish, and then I also want to show you guys some stuff with rendering transparency in ZBrush for the bubbles. But yeah, let's starfish it up. Make sure we don't have any more cues before we move on though. Looks like it has easel texture for the sand. That's why I was saying I think it would be a good idea to go back through and smooth out the form where it's feeling like it's getting that repetitiveness to it, for sure. I think you mean canvas, right? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I said, that I meant canvas. But you can let me know. I might have said document. This here, the thing that we're looking at, this is called your document, your ZBrush document. Fix that real quick. I don't know. What did I say? Let's starfish it up. It's gonna be me later after I pass out, starfish on my bed. Let's start with, what do you guys think for a starfish? Start with a cube. Might be the easiest way. Could just start with a sphere, either or, works for me. So what I've done here is I've gone down into the initialize palette, and turned on Q-Cube or Quick Cube with a 1x1x1. We'll do just that straight up. So after you have that, all we have to do is create one quick leg for our starfish, which we can just taper in just like this. Super quick, super easy, and I'm just moving vertices around, nothing crazy. Oh, what do we got there? That is fine. We had our verts flipping in on themselves. That is not what we want. All right, and now let's use our Z Modeler brush, if you're familiar with it. We're gonna crease up some edges. Crease, just a single edge. Click on those. And we might actually run some bevels through this instead of creasing. Creasing can be a little bit hard and destructive. I think we'll try to make it work with creases, and then if we really want to, we can go back through and add some bevels later. I think there will be a cooler quick trick that we can do though with subdivisions. I'll show you guys something cool. Looked like it had the texture of a canvas. I gotcha. I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right, starfish it. So we have a 5-pointed star. So what do we want to do here? I guess 360, or no, sorry. 90 divided by 5 because we're going to be using our transpose line, if you're familiar with this. We're going to be centering this line to about right here. Let's move this down a little bit. I'll show you guys a little trick here where you can get exact degree rotations with your transpose line. It's pretty cool. All right, so preferences, transpose, not units, but just transpose. And then we're gonna look at this number here, this rotation steps. So essentially you wanna take this number, whatever number this is, and you wanna adjust it to create the number of rotations you get when holding the shift key and rotating here. So right now it is set to 4, which means that this object will rotate 1, 2, 3, 4 times for every 90 degrees, right? But if you look at the settings here, if you hold control over anything in ZBrush, it'll give you some more information. It says that it essentially says that it's 360 divided by the number that you put in here, which is why I started to do 360 by 5, but it's actually 90 by 5. So that, just for confusion's sake, you might want to keep that in mind. So I think I need to set this to, is it 18? Or no, 18 would be too many. What do I need here? I don't think I can do, maybe not. So I think the most that I can actually get out of this would be that. Let's see, so we would want, maybe it would be 360 by 5, but that would be a lot. That would be way too many steps per point. I'm trying to think of a way where we could do this very quickly with the transpose unit trick that I have here. Might not be able to do it with this. There are other ways that we can get more accurate rotational degrees here. What do you guys think? I'm trying to think of another way we could do it. I know I've done 5-pointed stars before. I'm trying to think how I did it in the past. It's been a while since I've starfished. Let's see. So 360, whoops, that was... Did I hit multiply? Bam, 72 degrees. So every 72 degrees, I mean, we could literally just like gimmick it and rotate it essentially where we want, but that's no fun. I don't want to do that. I mean, this is like super easy to like gimmick, right? I wanted to do an exact 72 degrees. But because I can't do rotational step decimal places, I don't think that's going to be possible using the transpose line, which is unfortunate. I'm trying to think for 72. Well, for now, I think we'll just kind of gimmick it, like I said, because this is super easy to just duplicate and mirror across to the other side. It literally takes 2 seconds. Whoops. What do we got going on there? Mirror, please. Thank you. So that's super easy to do for a quick little starfish kind of blockout shape. But at least in ZBrush, I'll have to think about it. I'll come back to you guys. An insert brush. Could you do something with rotational symmetry? That's not a bad idea. So what you can do, what was it, Chris, I believe, said was maybe something with rotational symmetry. So instead of doing it this way, here's what we'll do. If we want to get exact, we will append a sphere and turn on, up here in transform, activate symmetry, turn on Y symmetry, and we will set radial count to 5. So we have radial Y symmetry turned on. So now we can sculpt on this and it will repeat that around the shape. So then what we'll do is grab our geometry. I'll just kind of look at it here directly and create an insert mesh brush. So we'll do that. Just click on new, go back to our sphere, and just like that, we can insert those directly on there. I'll hold the shift key so it snaps, and voila, we have the beginnings of a starfish. And if we would like to have these be connected up in the middle the way I had it kind of going before, we can go to our brush depth and set the embed value a lot lower. And I'll just do this one more time. Whoops, swapped our brush, insert mesh. Ooh, there we go. It's not wanting to cooperate, but we can just kind of move that in manually if we want to. I think what I'll do is mess with the geo here. So I know there's a way that I can do exactly 72 degrees because I've done it before. Just off the top of my head, I cannot think of it. So we'll have to come back to that. Maybe in the next stream, I'll come back with the solution, or I'll make a video of it over on my channel. At least this way we can actually keep the radial Y symmetry on while we work on our starfish and sculpt on this on all these different parts at the same time. So if I move in one area, it's going to move and adjust it in another. But let's make sure that this is manipulating correctly. Let's see, let me add in some quick subdivs. Make sure that this is all even here, aligned with the actual brush. Looks like it is. I think something's going on here. Thought my normals were flipped or something. My move brush is being a little bit weird. You guys will have to give me a sec here. Figure out why. Why oh why is our move brush being weird? That is very strange. You guys see that? So I'm grabbing the geometry over here. I don't have backface masking on, which is what I thought the issue was. That's very, very odd. Not getting what we want there. So I think I broke my move brush, which is fun. I think I'll have to... Ooh, that is so weird. I don't think I've ever experienced this one before. Well, that's fun and new. We'll do a quick save, a quick save, and restart ZBrush. And I'm sure that brush will be just fine when we boot back up. But yes, in terms of those degrees, getting that exact 72 degrees of rotation to have 5 evenly rotated segments. We did get that with the radial symmetry. That's a little bit gimmicky though. I would like to figure out how we can do that exactly. Let me make sure that my move brush is working now. This is what should be happening. That's what we expect to happen. Let's go back to our quick save here. Recovered. No. This one right here. Open that back up. See if we can get this sorted out. There we go. Back to working order. That's what we like to see. I have no idea what was going on there. It was just a weird little bug. Look at that. Perfectly fine. Working exactly the way it should now. Well, that's kind of fun. Little dancing starfish. Let's re-import our doggo. Load up the spotlight. Got one saved for him. Very, very strange. Never had that one happen to me before, especially while live streaming. God bless symmetry, that's right. Symmetry is pretty sweet. Yeah, the back face masking was not on. No idea what was happening there. Just didn't want to work at all. All right, so let's get back to our starfish. Obviously, the shape that we have created is too thin, so we can either take some time to thicken this up and like recreate the pieces. I think that sounds like a lot of wasted time, so I think we could probably just use a deformation inflate and get this guy a little bit closer to a chunky star. We'll just keep inflating. I think that looks pretty good. And let's go a little bit more narrow for the tips of our starfish. So again, we can just manipulate all these at once. Super nice to be able to do this. Obviously we have a big old hole in the middle of our starfish. We'll fix that later. He's not going anywhere. I'm going to continue to inflate this though. I think it's going to be the easiest way to fill in some of this area in here. Get these connected out a little bit further. Stretch. More. And you know what? I think that's pretty close. Okay. And then I'll just do the same thing that I did up here to squeeze that in. All right, beautiful. Albeit a little messy, but that is okay. Messy is just fine. We can work with messy. So we can clean up messy later on. Alright, just making sure that that wasn't feeling super thick there. Let's move that edge down a little bit closer as well. Feeling pretty good. Alright, so we got these subdivision levels in here. Ooh, you know what? Let's just recreate some of those. I have most of these edges creased. I wonder if the problem was stemming from the creased edges for some reason. Because now my edges are no longer creased. But instead of creasing them, I'll just add in some subdivision levels. And we'll just delete them. I don't really need them. I mainly just want a little bit more geometry. So I can use move backface masking and close up the middle there. And then just run a very simple Dynamesh on this. This thing's pretty large though. So let me scale you down a little bit to a size that ZBrush likes a little bit better. Alright, let's Dynamesh you. So if you guys are unfamiliar with local symmetry, if you guys are working on something, like for instance, my starfish is now no longer on the symmetrical axis, so I can't use radial symmetry to the benefit that I would normally like to. This happens often with, just simple X symmetry as well. If you turn on local symmetry, instead of looking at your world axis for where your object is aligned, it'll instead look at the object and create the symmetrical plane for the object. So the radial symmetry here, it's actually being a little janky still, which is unfortunate. Should be looking exactly the same on every single side there. Looks a little bit thicker down here. It might just be the shadow. Let me move the light. It's a little hard to tell. It looks a little bit thicker in here than it does on that one. But with local symmetry, for instance, just so you guys can see this, we'll turn off radial. And we'll go to X symmetry here. So we can sculpt on this with X symmetry, just like any other object, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But if we move this off the X axis, now you can see that red dot over here. That's where it's affecting the other half of the geometry. If we turn on local though, and start sculpting, you can see that it's looking at the geometry for our symmetry. Again, it's being a little bit weird here with this object, so you know what? I think we'll just kind of work with this with just maybe X symmetry for a few minutes here, just to clean up some of this super nasty geometry that we're getting here, which is unfortunate. Let's do a mirror and weld that kind of clean this up, and we can even remesh this, and I think we'll be in a good place for getting a little bit closer towards our starfish. I think what I would like to do, you know, that's a little bit too high of a resolution for me. What I would like to do next is kind of pull up these tight lines. Is that remeshing or not? Let me try that one more time here. A little bit lower. I'd like to pull up these tight lines coming up into the center of the starfish. Try to get those a little bit closer to the middle. What I'm attempting to do here is get the resolution low enough that these hard edges start to blend out. It's not really wanting to work though, so I think we'll just go through and smooth some of these manually very quickly. This will take 5 seconds. And we could probably pinch some of that, but let's just try ZBrushing this as low as we can go, 0.1. And I think we should get some pretty good results for rounding that edge out. There we go. So now when we smooth this, we have a lot better luck. I'll run, I think, just a pinch brush with lazy mouse through here. And I would be continuing to use that radial symmetry, but it looked like it was being a little janky. Wasn't wanting to be our friend. Plus our starfish isn't going to be, you know, exactly the same on every single leg, tentacle. What do starfish have? Feet, I guess? I don't know exactly what they're called. I'm not a marine biologist by any means. But they're not going to be exactly the same. We'll break symmetry on this eventually. But I think for now we just want to go through and tighten up some of these lines just a little bit. And let's see here. Get a little bit, whoops, a little bit tighter through here. So that transition's a little bit better. And I'm also going to inflate this guy a little bit. Go back down into deformation, inflate, and crank that up. You know what? Instead of that, I might just pull in on some of these legs. Using array mesh rotation. That might be a very good way to get that specific number of degrees. I think that would be it. If that is if that is divisible by 360, if you can get like a full degrees of rotation out of that, then yes, I think that would be a good way to go about it. And that might be how I've done that in the past. So in Array Mesh, which is under Tool Array Mesh, you have these little buttons down here, these little toggles. You want to set it to rotation. And obviously, you would probably have to set the pivot point for that to be in the middle. So you'd probably have to mess with the offset a little bit as well. It's a little bit weird with Array Mesh because it will rotate concentrically around the object. So you might have to play around with that a little bit to get the exact look and feel that you're looking for, to get that XYZ amount. I'm actually not sure that that would work now that I think about that a little bit more. But you might be able to play around with that and get pretty close. But I think in terms of accuracy, I think the insert mesh way that we did this would be a little bit closer. Looks like Patrick. I could see it. He's got, you know, a little bit of the pink coloration there. Limbs is a pretty good general term. Yeah, I think so. Here, let's see. Let's see if local sim is going to be our friend on this one last time. Transform, Y sim, rotate. Doesn't look like it. Does not look like it. And I'm really not sure why. I could have sworn local sim worked with radial. But like I said, there are some asymmetrical things here that we want to deal with. I don't want that to bleed up there too much. Maybe just a little bit too thick for my liking. Some thick boys. Let's thin them out really quick. Using some quick little transpose masking rotation tricks. And you know what, I think that's like pretty close to what we would want. He's probably a little fat. Probably just want to squeeze him down a little bit. Thin him out. We could project some poly paint onto this, but most of the time I like to just block out colors by selecting a kind of base color here. Filling that in. And then instead of doing what we did before with the paint spray, I'll just use a quick like little block out here. We won't use any fancy paint spray or anything like that. Let's do this nice and quick. Give me a low RGB intensity, please. And we'll just like paint a little bit of that. Start to get our starfish looking a little bit closer to our concept. So typically when I block out paint, I try to just do it really quick and get a lot of the big main color changes in there. I do the same thing with faces. I've shown that off on stream here before. If you guys are interested in painting faces, I have a few vids over on my YouTube channel. It's not too different from what I'm doing right here with a starfish. Kind of block out some of the colors and then start getting a little bit more complicated. I'm using the C key, by the way, to sample colors very quickly. It's just a nice, quick way so I can sample this light color. You can see how that changes over there. V swaps colors. So oftentimes I see people used to ask all the time. They were like working on something and then, oh no, my model's black. What happened? What's going on? You typically just hit the V key on accident and swapped your poly paint color. Got a little confused. No problem, it happens to us all. Just 5 seconds ago, I was getting confused by my move brush. No idea what the heck was going on there. All right. And then if you want to take some time to neutralize a little bit of the color, what I recommend doing is using a low RGB intensity value and then just clicking on fill object a few times. And it'll tend to kind of bring all those colors a little bit closer together. Essentially what this does is that's a 15% infill for that color. It's a good way to think about it. And maybe I might hit this with a little bit of spray. I think that might be a little fun here. We'll do the same thing that we did before. Let's see. Just get a little bit of that texture on there. A little bit more variation in the color, right? Very nice. The bottom of it's all purple, but you know, we can maybe just do a quick Quick little pass down there to lighten some of that up. Just very quickly. Not a big deal, it'll never be seen. But yes, let's see here. Let's turn all of our junk on. We have our quick little ground plane here that we made. That needs some more paint on it, but yes. We have a little starfish here that I think could be a bit fatter, and I think we'll mess with the paint a little bit more on him as well. But very nice. I think we could probably just inflate this and get it a bit closer. Maybe. We'll see. Instead of using the deformation inflate, I'll actually just use my transpose line. Give that a quick little, whoops, move, and bam. Fatten him up a bit. Cool, cool, cool. So we could probably do another pass of paint on him, but I think I'll wait to do that. I'll do that plus the background at the same time. Next, let's line up some very quick bubbles, and I'll show you guys how we can do some transparent stuff in ZBrush for materials. Brave, what's going on? Nice haircut. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words. Let's do a bubble or two. I think it's pretty obvious what we're going to use for this. Wherever our append button is, there we go. Append and a sphere. Beautiful. And let's just move this up into place. Somewhere around here. And we'll scale this down. And what I would like to do is just use my move brush and change the shape of this a little bit. I don't want perfectly round bubbles. It feels a little awkward, I think. But also, I think this is too dense of geometry to do the simple move that we would like. So let's just Z-remesh it down really low. This will also help to give it some abnormality so it's not perfectly round, which would be nice. And then I'll just use my move brush and shape it up a little bit. I think that's fine. And then instead of spending the time to duplicate this over and over again, I'll just use my transpose line, hold Control, click, and drag. And then I'll just kind of reposition a few of these here. And then we obviously don't want these all to look and feel the exact same, so we'll play with scale and moving and rotating these around. And let's see, let's get some of these smaller bubbles as well. There's a little one right here. I'm thinking about this in 3D space, trying to get some height and depth to these. Go a little one down here. Make sure I'm positioning these close to where they need to be. Let's move this down. So I'm trying to cluster a little bit with these so they're not super far spread out. It feels actually more awkward when you have, I think, if you're trying to do a pattern of something and you have it a little bit more randomized and just kind of like even, whereas if you have some clusters of shapes, it feels a little bit more natural and it gives your eye a little bit of rest between clumps of shapes. And this 2D artist obviously understands that as well, so they've done that here. All right, let's see, let's just move this down a bit. Let that quick save do its thing. Beautiful, we got some nice quick little bubbles here. We could probably do a couple more, just real fast. Probably a little bit too big, but that's okay. All right, sure. We'll say that's good for bubble time. Move that around. Now let's talk about materials and how we could go about rendering some of the symmetry here. Not sure why that, or rendering some of the transparency here. I'm not sure why that remesh freaked out though. Let's try that one more time. Looked like it was having a rough go of those bubbles. Just trying to fix some of those awkward transitional areas. And I think that looks pretty good for our really simple bubbles. So, playing around with materials, there are a number of things that we could play with to start getting a glass effect. But I think the first thing we want to do is just grab a material. I'm going to use, I think, the just basic toy plastic material and fill this in. And just fill that in with solid material, solid white color. And then we're going to come down all the way under Tool to Display Properties and then go into BPR Settings. And we are going to turn on BPR Transparent Shading. And yes, we would like to turn that on in the render palette as well. And then we're going to mess with this BPR visibility slider here. And I'll just crank that down to about 50% and do a BPR render so you can see what that starts to look like. So you can already see we're starting to get a little bit of a transparency effect. And I will put some geometry behind that so we can very quickly make sure that we're getting that transparent effect. So I've seen a lot of questions about rendering transparency in ZBrush and how you go about doing that. Right down here under Display Properties, BPR Settings, BPR Transparent Shading, and then you just have to crank and adjust this one here, BPR Visibility. I think instead of using a white infill, let's try black. I think this might be a little bit closer to what we're looking for, based on what I'm seeing there. And so we're starting to get like this white outline around the bubbles, but it feels like it's got this more kind of shaded look in the center there. So let's adjust. Let's maybe pull this down really low, like 15%. That might be getting too transparent. Let's take a look. Let's get like a quick see-through effect here. Another thing that we can do, I think that looks too transparent. Another thing that we can do to aid us in this effect is also mess with our material settings. So let's open up material, just dock this over here and open up our modifiers. Let's check out a few different settings here. So I'm going to turn ambient way down. And let's see, diffuse, we'll turn that back up. Right about, we'll try about there. And then specular, for the specular curve, let's open up this. And see if we can adjust that just a little bit. So I'm just adjusting the curve a tad to see if we can get a little bit of a better effect here. And what did we have that at before? It was like around 50% or so, 45, 50%. Let's see what this is starting to look like. So unfortunately we have to do a quick BPR render every time we want to do this. That's why I've been hiding the other geometry. This is actually starting to look a lot closer than the previous bubbles that we were getting. So that's starting to feel a bit better. Another thing that we could do that might be lucrative is instead of relying on the specularity of the material, we could just crank that all the way down to 0. So say goodbye specular, and instead of doing that, it might be fun to play around with manually painting, let's go back to our freehand brushstroke here, manually painting in some highlights. This could be fun just to get like a quick little interesting effect. We'll see. Let's just see what like one little highlight there looks like, if this even goes through. All right, so yeah, you could probably go through and manually paint a few of these. I don't think it would be that hard either. It looks like there's some complex lighting kind of hanging out on these bubbles. Let's try one more. But yeah, we could probably play around with this for a little bit. I think I prefer to just do all the highlights in the actual specularity of the material, but I think that's pretty cool in terms of, you know, what we can get out of here. Let's mess with this specularity. Try to get that back to the default there. So that is how you work with transparency in ZBrush, for those that are curious. I think that the black material works a little bit better, and what I could do is maybe like double up the geometry if I wanted to get that white outline for the bubble, and try to create two different color infills with transparency so that it got like this white kind of rim effect. I think that might be one way that we could go about that, but I would like to move on so we don't focus on materials here too long. I mainly just wanted to show off the transparency settings here. I'm not sure why the BPR stopped rendering there. Not sure what happened. Can you actually keep the transparency in the viewport? So you cannot keep the BPR transparency under display properties in the viewport, to my knowledge. It is only for each BPR render, so you can't just like pre-visit. So to my knowledge, no, but somebody else might have a different process that I do not know about. But to my knowledge, I don't believe so. Let's see. Hey Ben, can I ask what age did you start ZBrushing and how old are you? Absolutely, you can ask. But I think, not to diss your question, but I think often the question of years is a really bad question. And I've talked about this many times on stream before. So for those that are new here, I typically think measuring a skill in terms of how many years you've been doing it means nothing. And I think that's pretty obvious to people as well, right? I've been digitally sculpting in ZBrush for 5 years. For 5 years, and that doesn't mean anything. I mean, that means I could use it once a month, right, for 5 years. Or that means I could use it every day for 5 years, which is a little bit closer to the truth, right? I digitally sculpt in ZBrush now every day. When I first started, I didn't do it every day, but pretty quickly in there, I started, you know, using it as much as I could. I wish there was a way that I could see how many hours I've put in, because that would be a lot closer to that estimate of, you know, how long I've been going to where I am now. But yes, about 5 years. I think years, like I said, it's just a really bad measurement of time for skill. It's like, well, how long you been, you know, running? It's like, well, you know, 5 years, but I run, you know, once every month or so. It's like, oh, okay. So you run a little bit. It's like, what would that be? You've ran 60 times. It doesn't really mean too much. All right, so what I wanted to do was spend a little bit time to correct some of the posing on our little shark pup here, because the pose of our dude up here, the curve is a lot more extreme, and the head of the character is a lot larger than what I'm seeing in my sculpt here. So I'm going to take this image just so you guys can see what I'm seeing. Turn down the opacity really low. We'll scale that up. And we'll overlay this on top of our shark pup here. Let me put him, that looks good. We'll go to movie, timeline show. We'll just click right there. Bada boom. Let's scale this up. Overlay that a little bit better. Let's see, opacity. Let me see. Try to line that up. I'm trying to line this up with my legs a little bit. And you can see how much larger the head is in this concept. Our body is actually proportionally pretty close the way I have this lined up. Let me make sure that's where I have that. And what I've done here with my timeline is essentially so I can move this around and snap back to that position really quick. So what I'm gonna do is hop into Transpose Master. We'll just do that very quick. This is under Z plugin, Transpose Master, T-Pose Mesh. We will do some quick rotation and scaling up of the head to get that feeling closer to our very good boy here. Let's grab our body and whoop. Beautiful. Let's soften that a little bit. And twist. Twist that up. And obviously there's some other stuff here that we want to, I think, spend some time correcting. Let's see. Let's grab our tail. And rotate this up. And obviously there are some scale differences here, which are pretty easy for me to just fix with my move brush. Just a few seconds of moving and rotating around, and we're pretty close. And then looking at the silhouette there, the line flowing through here, what I need to happen is I need my body to actually shift over a little bit, starting about right there. Looking at that line of the body, making sure that that is lining up properly. And then this is just, you know, way out here. Get a lot more of that twist in there. And we'll kind of pull this up. And I know it's pushed to the extreme right now, but you gotta break stuff before you can fix it. So let's just kind of continue to push that around. And then I'll grab this arm and move this up a little bit. I'm not gonna mess with the scale of my arms just yet because there is some perspective going on in that image, and that hand over there is much larger than the other one in that image. So I think it's probably something that we'll probably end up scaling both of them. I want to keep, you know, in 2D, stuff can get cheated a lot. In 3D, I try to keep it within the realm of reality as best as I can. So for some of this stuff, I'm fine with cheating it, but for stuff like scale or, you know, just some major form changes, a lot of the time, I like to ground that in reality as best as I can. Let's see. All right, so he's getting all over there. I think we scale up a few more things here. Oh, that leg is much wider there in the concept than what we got going on. Let's just go through here, do a quick mask, and scale this up. Alright, let's get a little bit closer. I think the position is off for that back leg, but I would like to first scale up our cute little head. Position that. Get our rotation correct, and yeah, that head is just way larger than what we got going on here. All right. realign some of this back up. And my body is gonna have to get quite a bit more wide up here towards the top. So let me hide this arm, make this a little bit easier on ourselves. Transition that up to the rest of this a little bit better. And I've kept this separated for a while, specifically for this reason, because I knew that I was gonna have to scale this head up once I got into posing a little bit more. And there we go, that line is starting to blend up there a lot nicer now. And turn that arm back on. So this is starting to feel proportionally just a lot closer to me. I'm liking that a lot better. Just kind of blend that in a bit more and probably work on this other leg down here for a minute. How do you set up the same distance for the spotlight reference? Sometimes I mess up moving a little bit of your sculpt. Adrian, I'm not sure what you mean in terms of setting up the spotlight reference. I've essentially put the image here in just like one area, and then after I found a spot where I like where it is, I just kind of toggle that on and off, or have that where it is, and then I put my mesh and just kind of align it, and then create a point on my timeline, which you can turn on in Movie, Timeline, Show, Timeline, Show, and then you can drop a point on your timeline. It's essentially a keyframe, and yeah, you can just snap back to that whenever you need to grab that. You can also, you know, do moves and rotates and stuff like that, and then actually tween, like in animation software, between those two. And then if you want to get rid of one of these keyframes, you can click and drag it off the timeline to delete it. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. All right. Professor Bum, is any of this manually retopoed? No, this is all ZBrush auto topology, just to get something that is sculpturally efficient here, which is what we have currently. I think the head needs to move up a little bit. We're also getting a little bit of the neck poking through into the mouth, which is no bueno. Ooh, just slide that up ever so slightly. And just try to fix some of the rotation here. And this is, like I said, pretty close. And it's feeling quite a bit better now that we have a lot more curve going on for that extreme pose. So this is where we were before, and I'm about to translate all those changes back onto our mesh. But first, before we do that, there's some, oh, you know what, it might be easier to do this on the actual body outside. So let's just T-pose back and then I'll fix the leg. So let's go in here under Transpose Master again and T-pose our mesh. And then we'll see all those changes cascade back onto our geometry. No problem, Adrian. Happy that that answered your question there. Hopefully that'll help you a lot more in the future. Eben says, did you take classes or are you self-taught? I am self-taught, and I have taken one class once. All right, this is where it's getting funky, right down here. In terms of classes, though, there's so much stuff out there for, you know, how to use software and stuff like that. In terms of learning the software, what I did, for people that don't know, for people that are new here, I just, when I learned ZBrush, it was before there was like a bunch of people like this on the ZBrush channel doing a ton of free content for people, which is awesome. I love that this exists now, and I love being a part of it. but it didn't exist really when I started learning ZBrush, so I had to do it the old-fashioned way. I just bought a couple books and like read through the entire thing, folded down about every 2 or 3 pages, every other 2 or 3 pages. I had like so many dog ears in them, it's crazy. I actually still have these old books. But that was just to learn the software, and there really is a ton of stuff that focuses on learning software out there. But there's not really a lot that focuses on the mindset of sculpting and working on creating, you know, appealing form and shape. So that's really what I try to do in my live streams and over on my YouTube channel, is because there's just not a lot of stuff that goes into that, and it's the hardest part. For people that are new to ZBrush, and I'm sure there are some people that are new here to ZBrush and digital sculpting, you know, you go through that first kind of growing pain of learning the software. And sure, that's kind of like a big hump to get over, but once you get over that hump, then you realize, oh my god, there's this mountain in front of me called sculpting now that I have to learn and figure out. And that's, excuse me, that's really the hard part. So that's really what I try to focus on a little bit more for my stuff. And hopefully it's helpful. Wondergam, what is going on? Lovely gams you got going on there. ZBrush does a decent job. ZBrush does a fantastic job, in my opinion, especially if you use it in combination with polygroups. Polygroups and occasionally some ZBrush guides can really be pushed pretty far. I'm gonna move this. I no longer need this to line up. Now I just need it as a reference I can use to fix some of the form here in my body, because the main kind of edge here, like where we were talking about hits and breaks, that's where my surface starts to turn. For those that missed our initial demonstration, the video here will be posted over on YouTube. I'm not sure if there is a link to the Pixelogic ZBrush YouTube channel below, but I also have a video over on my YouTube channel, which you can just Google Follygon, I'm sure you'll find it, talking about specifically hits and breaks and how we can better translate stuff from 2D to 3D. So that was at the beginning of this stream. Again, if you guys want to check that out over on my YouTube channel, you can find that, or the VOD will be posted probably in the next week or so, I think. Kind of depends how much stuff is in the backlog. Let's get through here and adjust where that surface changes directions. I'm just using my move brush. We're getting a little bit late here on time. We'll try to correct as much as we can here, as quickly as we can. Doing some focus on 3D modeling and animation. This stuff has always intrigued me a lot. Awesome. Well, welcome to the club. All the cool kids hang out here doing 3D stuff. Let's see, what do I want to do for this hand? Kind of align that a little bit better. Probably end up pulling back on that, but you can see how the shape of my body has now started to warp. And it's not looking super appealing anymore. So I just need to work on where that surface is turning a little bit better. Make sure that I'm retaining that volume all the way down the length of that object. I'm getting some awkward turns here and there. It's easy enough to fix though. Ooh. Angry Monday, welcome back, dude. How are you doing? It has been a while. I'm going through that learning hump now. It's tough in the beginning, but I'm actually having fun with ZBrush. Just gotta get over how my stuff looks like aliens. That's right. Quantity over quality in those early stages, guys. I really do think that'll help you out a lot. Try to sculpt as much as you can and get over those tough little areas. You're gonna be making a bunch of poop sandwiches for a while, as we like to say. Whoops, wrong brush there. I want my select lasso. Just trying to blend down here a little bit better so we can match that silhouette a little bit more closely. Starting to get there. I'm wondering if that leg just needs to be wider for this length here. Let's see. You seem to be using the transpose line for the most part. Do you not like the gizmo, or do you simply prefer the old way? I grew up with I started using the transpose line when I started using ZBrush. 3D gizmo didn't exist, so I used the transpose line. For those that don't know, there's a ton of hidden awesome features in the transpose line. You can do stuff like inflate, you can do stuff like bend deformers, you can do all sorts of awesome little secret hidden things with the transpose line. And I get asked that question so much that I actually made a YouTube video describing all the secret hidden functions that you can do with the screen transpose line. Share, copy link, bada boom. Fired off in chat. Go crazy. So I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with the transpose line, and check it out. Check it out in that video. I think you would be surprised by how many cool little things that you can do in there. Been super busy? No problem, dude. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. Glad to see that you are doing well as well. Well as well. Well as well as well. Alright. So I have moved my body now and stretched quite a bit, so our neck folds aren't really, well, where the neck is. So we need to realign that stuff. So I'm going to toggle off my talls, go away, and realign some of these folds that we blocked out during our last stream. I'll just use my move brush. It really shouldn't be that hard to get that aligned back up there. And just make sure we rotate around. Looks like we're maintaining our form fairly well here. Kind of liking how that starts to snake back up. Let's see. If anything, I might try to get a little bit more volume around here. And probably I need to realign these folds as well with our other leg, now that those are moved. I've done a lot of stretching here, but like I said, you gotta break some stuff to fix it. Our pose was nowhere near enough twisted off to the side, so now this is feeling, I think, just a million times closer. You can start to correct some of this garbo down here. Like this leg, for instance, is sticking out from the mesh super duper far. I say we, whoops, bring it in a little bit. We'll have to do some work to blend this back here, like what we did with the other one. I don't think that'll be too crazy hard. I think the hardest part of blending this side of the body for the limbs will just be the folds that we have here, and trying to get all that to feel like really integrated there. Remember that when you're, doing anything that's combining geometry like what I did here with the teeth, you can see that I've sculpted up volume around the gums. And this helps to make the teeth just feel, not like they're just stuck on there. Even for the gums, I've created some additional form in here. Although it's quick and really simple, it's still necessary to make sure that your shapes are all flown together well and not just kind of geometry interpolating each other, which always feels like super, super awkward. The deep ocean creature, yes, absolutely. No problem, no problem. A tentative slug. Very nice name. What is the creature? It is a shark pup. For those that are just joining us, we are very close here to the end of our time today. So I'll go ahead and shout out the artist again. It is Lily BZ. She has a deviant art. That's where I found this image. I actually found it on Reddit and then subsequently did a reverse Google image search to find her work. But yes, LILIBZ. There's her name down there. You can go check out some of her work. But yeah, in terms of other corrections here, I think we'll probably hold off here since we're kind of at the end of our time and make sure we answer any last minute questions. How do you do a smoothing mask? Asks Wondergam. Yep, no problem. That's very easy to do. So I'm using the mask lasso. Hold the control key. You can click up here to swap your mask brush. I'm not sure why mine's not working. There we go. And I'm using the mask lasso, so you can just click and select that one. So I'll just mask off my tail very quickly. And then what you want to do, I'll lower my subdivision level here to the bottom so you can see even better, is come down into your masking palette and click on blur mask. So that blurs that. But there is a hotkey for this by default. It actually doesn't do this operation though. It does something a little bit different, and I'll show you the difference. So I'll just mask off something, this time using topological masking. And then we have a very hard, mask here that I just very quickly did. So control clicking on your canvas blurs a mask, but it only blurs it in the direction of your mask. So you have to flip the mask by control clicking on your canvas and then control click on your geometry to blur it the other direction. If you don't want to do all that though, you can just come in here to blur mask and that will blur it both directions. So control clicking blurs one way. I think you can see the difference here. And blur mask blurs both ways. So what I've done is I've set up a hotkey for this blur mask operation so that I can just do that whenever I want very quickly. Other than that, you can also hold Control and Alt to sharpen a mask, and then click, Control Alt click. So that's the other little operation that you can do. But yes, very powerful masking tools in ZBrush. Some nice default hotkeys already set up. Good stuff, good stuff. No problem, my dude. All right. Well, like I said, we're kind of at the end of our time here today. I'll give, another minute or so here for some final cues or anything like that. But I just want to say thank you for coming and hanging out, guys. It's been awesome. The VOD for this, again, if you guys missed anything or want to check out the process that we did at the beginning, talking about the quick demonstration for hits and breaks and kind of interpreting form, that'll be on the VOD. That'll be posted here soon, hopefully, over on the Pixelogic channel. But if not already, go ahead and click the follow or subscribe button down below wherever you guys are watching, whether you're here on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook, or whatever. But let's see. What's the name of the tool you are using for reference? It is called Spotlight. It is a default tool in ZBrush. It is under Texture, Spotlight right here. So what you do is you import an image, and then you select your image, and you just click on this Add to Spotlight button, and then you have to close your light box. If you just look up ZBrush Spotlight tutorial, I'm sure you can find something good that will describe all the neat little tools and functions that you can do with that guy. Awesome, 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 guys. Well, again, for those who don't know, I am Follygon. You can find my stuff just by Googling Follygon. I also have a Gumroad that I always shout out here at the end, with some higher quality courses and tutorials that I put a lot more time into than I do here in just a quick little live stream. But I hope the live streams have been helpful for you. But yes, courses, tutorials, brushes, materials, base meshes, all sorts of awesome goodies here. Gumroad.com/Follygon. I'll just quickly slap that link in there for you guys if you want to check it out. And I think that is where I will leave you guys. Again, you have a fantastic rest of your night, and I will see you guys on next Tuesday at 6 p.m. EST. If you're around, come and hang out.